Best of r/malicious compliance episode 40. A while back, a good friend got into a car accident. He's fine, but his car was nearly totaled. Some grandpa took a very wide turn and clipped him. I immediately let my friend borrow my car to get around. Due to reasons I won't get into right now, the car repair shop realized that the insurance payout was not enough to actually repair the car, and court proceedings have taken many long months and are still unresolved. Point is, I gave him my car hoping it would be a month at most, but it turned out to be more like a year. The good thing is that I absolutely do not mind him driving my car. I got it for university, but now that I'm done with it and live, and work, with my parents, I really don't need my car. My parents both have nicer cars that use way less gas, and we often travel 2 or 3 at a time, so we need 2 cars at most. My car is just a shitty old bitter anyway, it's barely even worth selling, and I know for a fact that it would just be sitting somewhere parked on the street for several months now, largely unmoved. In fact, my dad's car was already mostly unused for 6 months while we just used my mom's to get around. TL. Doctor, we have 3 cars but only need 2 cars. My parents were originally okay with me letting my friend borrow my car, but soon started to complain how we're paying taxes and insurance on a car that he is using, which we would be doing either way. No amount of telling them that we wouldn't be getting rid of it changed their mind that it was somehow unfair that we were paying for his car now. For months, they bothered me to get my car back. Eventually, I said okay, I'm going to get my car back. I borrowed my dad's Mercedes and drove 150 kilometers to my friend and said I needed my car back. Parked my dad's car behind my own, gave my friend the keys to my dad's car and took my own, and drove back home. Arrived home with a big grin. I got my car back, just like you asked. My parents were delighted, until my dad asked where his car was. I said at my friend's. I can't exactly drive both cars home, can I? He was upset. Get me my car back. I took my time, a full week of letting them complain that I should get my dad's car back until I finally made another 150 kilometers trip to swap cars again, giving him my car back, and driving home with my dad's Mercedes. It's been about 6 months since, and they haven't complained a single time. I much prefer my car being moved and used than it just sitting out in the rain. Anyway, thank you. Next. I was young and stupid in 2007 when my command was deployed to Iraq. Being an E3 at the time, I had been enlisted for 3 years but was still at the bottom of the totem pole. No respect, no authority, and all the worst jobs. In comes a newly minted 01, Butterbur. He had been an E5 a few weeks before and got into the officer program. Congratulations. Not my path, but good on you. After a week in Iraq, he starts randomly and regularly showing up at our compound. I saluted him the first time I saw him each day, but in a war zone saluting is generally discouraged. This guy came and went from our compound a dozen or more times a day. It must have really pissed him off each time he saw me in passing during the day because he had me standing at attention, in my face yelling at me about proper military etiquette like I was right out of boot camp. I stood there and took it. I actually had to focus on keeping a shit-eating grin off my face. Far be it from me, a lowly E3, to correct a eager beaver 01 that should have known better. If he wanted everyone to know he was an officer, I was going to give him the respect he deserved. From then on, every single time I passed him I saluted. Fun fact, officers are not required to return every salute, but it can be considered conduct unbecoming an officer if they don't. I need to look up the regulations, but it's a general rule that a salute is returned. I passed him walking out the building door. Salute. Pass him walking down the path. Salute. Passed him coming out of the portagen. Salute. Handed him his lunch. Salute. I would go out of my way to pass him so I could force his weaselly self to salute me back. He got so pissed off at me for that. By the end of that day he had me at attention again, yelling at me about my attitude. I was instructed to only salute once a day from then on. Someone clued him in on the dangers of letting everyone know whom to shoot first in an active war zone, and during shift turnover it was put out that saluting was suspended unless an 05 or above showed up. While looking up the regulations for this, I discovered this was also some sort of urban legend. I honestly had no idea, but this situation has probably came up regularly since the beginning of time. If you piss off the junior guys, they will find a way to get back at you in the most passive-aggressive way possible. By the time I retired I was an E6 and I would still pull this kind of crap against my leadership. No matter where you are on the ladder, there's always someone above you treating you like they are God's gift to the world. I don't want to throw out names, command, or base. TLDR, junior officer demands to be saluted in a war zone and I drove him nuts within one day. Edit. I have no idea why it's showing a random image of a woman as the post image. Maybe because of the query link? Thank you. Next. This is not so wild, but I've wanted to share an origin story on why I have stretched lobes. Flashback to sophomore year of high school, Texas. In the year 2000, I went to a very strict school when it came to personal appearance. I was just a few years ahead of school uniforms and rebelling from all forms of school control over me and my appearance. Want to dye your hair? Can't. That is a distraction from the learning environment. I later went blue from my last week there. My friend Chris came to school one day with his pierced ears, stretched, not quite to the size of a pencil but you could see through them. How cool, how tribal, how rebellious. I had seen this before on a website called BMSine, R.I.P. Shannon, but never in real life. And now that I had seen it in real life I wanted them for myself. I saw the attacks on Chris from the school and knew I wanted in on the style. Over the next week or so, I had caught up to Chris in ear stretching size and we had both started to get major flack from the school. That is when we decided to read into the dress code. There was a provision stating that earrings could be no larger than a dime. Such provisions were written in regards to ladies' hoop style earrings. No hooker earrings at school. We simply said since our earrings were no bigger than a dime that we were within the guidelines. They weren't happy about it, but we made them as close to a dime as possible, and walked around with shitty grins on our face. Thanks for reading my little story. P.S. Once I moved to the NW I knew there was no such dress code issues. While enrolling in the school, I had learned it was okay to have blue hair, or any color hair for that matter. And I knew I wanted to come to my first day with the biggest lobes I could afford, in a safe stretching sense. Texas school had started many weeks before my new school so I had a few weeks to get over a dime and worked up step by step. My first day was great. Other students insisted that I had to meet the only other guy with stretched ears. Him and I still talk to this day. I have a good job and they have never cost me a position or promotion. The biggest I have stretched is just under 2 inches, and at the moment they are just over 1 1/4 inches. I don't always wear them, but wore them today to dress up for an interview which went great and reminded me of this story. TL. Doctor School says earrings must be no larger than a dime. We take that measurement on its side to start an ear stretching mob at our school. Thank you. Next. So I'm a personal trainer who's trying to get started in the industry. Important later. Currently I have another job which required me to drive from Rotherham to Leeds for a meeting at a hotel. Boring office stuff. So because it's a 40-mile drive there and the same back, I asked if work would be paying for my fuel, which they didn't. So I took it as a whatever and drove there. Me and the others got a £13 meal limited for that day after the meeting. The hotel was expensive. £15 for a sandwich and a drink. And as the money available was on work issued cards I couldn't just pig out at a McDonald's or go to the co-op. I called my boss and asked if he could put the extra money on. You get what you're given. Read your terms and conditions. Here comes malicious compliance. I read through the terms and conditions because I'd lost out on food and fuel. In the T&Cs it said, all meals brought from home can be paid up to £10 per meal. As I said earlier, I'm a personal trainer. I have a freezer full of meal prep all the time. So the next time comes around we need to go for a meeting. I bring everything out of my freezer, about 30 meals, presented them and got around £220 for my food. Boss man called and he was livid. Why did you do that? You aren't allowed. He screamed down the phone, to which I replied, read your terms and conditions, haha. Thank you. Next. Not sure whether this fits better here or on r/less from it, or other likewise sub, but always wanted to post something here so I'll let you guys be the judge. I work on IT security, basically granting/revoking access to software to some people, designing access profiles, that sort of stuff, as I believe is no different anywhere. You need to put up a ticket with adequate approval to be granted access to access something within corporate systems. So my job consists in getting ticket, checking for approvals, assigning access, closing ticket. Monkey job 101 to some extent. So I get this ticket from username girl1. Please grant access to users girl1 and girl2 as per attached approval. I opened the attached email to find a long as can be chain of emails, with an approval for girl2 to be granted profiles is issued by the proper approver way in the bottom. It's not generally an issue that the approver is not the last person to email, as one could say, alter the email to read approved instead of denied upon forwarding the email to someone else, which I find to be an issue, but apparently our internal audit does not. I therefore proceed to process the ticket as one would. Access is granted to girl 2. No approval was provided to girl 1, therefore no action taken. Closed. Few days go by, and I get a second ticket. Please grant access to user girl 1 as per attached approval. I tend to remember these cases, especially when something out of the ordinary happened, or the verbiage used is pretty much the same. As soon as I opened the email, deja vu hit me like a brick. So I proceed to selective read the email up to the point with the approval. When I pay attention to the date it was issued, January 2019. Also it was changed from girl 2 to girl 1 in evident different font. Well, I could accuse her of forging an approval, but I really got no time to deal with such BS. Also I would need to rework the previous one. So I proceed with, as per policy, approvals should be no older than 30 days, which is true, and should be the last email issued by the approver i.e. not forwarded to someone, which isn't necessarily mandatory, but would save me from trouble. Closed. Hours later, same ticket is reopened, as I expected, and user goes all caps but ticket 123 was processed with this same approval date. Please take action. And take action I did. Sorry for the oversight. Access to profiles has been revoked effective immediately. Thank you for letting me know. Closed. Looking forward for the third ticket. Thank you. Next. Hi, so I'm not exactly sure if this counts as malicious compliance, but it's worth a try. So this takes place when I was in 10th grade. For some reason I still can't remember, the school decided to take away all benches/seating in the hallways. This meant we weren't able to sit between classes, sit during lunch if you ate in the hallways or were doing a project in the hallway. This really pissed a lot of kids off because there wasn't enough space for everybody in the lunchroom and nobody wanted to sit and eat like animals on the ground during lunch, so literally I think a couple days later about 800 out of 1000 or so kids in the entire school decided to hold a sit-in during class time and sat on the lockers, etc. This ended up with kids getting pulled off the lockers by security and shoved on the ground, and I think maybe 5 boys got suspended. But by the end of the week, they put the benches back and never took them away again. TL. Doctor, school took away benches so we sat on ground until they gave them back. Thank you. Next. I was in grade school but can't remember exactly which grade at the time. I know it was around 4th or 5th grade. Anyway, I also was part of the special ed program since information I take it takes longer to process and needed the extra help. Well, because of that, half my school day was in normal class and the other half was in special ed. E equals the oh so long ago younger me lol. TC equals teacher. Now onto the story. I went on a field trip the special ed class was having. Besides that, started off as a normal school day feeling fine. We went to some history/western place where they showed us a glimpse of how things were done back then and even made our own apple juice with some kind of crusher. Well, I started to not feel well during the last half of the trip with my stomach hurting, but nothing too bad. Like any kid, I went to ignore it, wanting to have fun, and the pain was light at the time. When we got back it was like an hour past the time we normally would go back to our normal classes. I walked in and took my seat. Stomach started to hurt worse, so I raised my hand. Now I don't remember everything that was said exactly, considering this was 30 years ago give or take. TC, what do you need? Me, my stomach hurts. Can I go to the nurse's office? TC, why didn't you complain about your stomach problem during the field trip you were on? You will be fine to stay in class. I remember trying to argue a little more to no effect. I couldn't understand at the time why she didn't believe me. I ended up just putting my head down on my desk holding my stomach till about 5 minutes later. That's when I threw up. Somehow for some reason no one noticed with the exception of the student sitting next to me. These desks weren't the usual ones that were one solid piece of furniture but small desks with separate chairs so it all landed between my feet. The kid next to me didn't say a word and I wasn't sure how anyone else didn't notice looking back at it. Or if they did they didn't say anything. I got up and went to walk to the teacher who was doing some paperwork while the rest of the class was studying. If I recall we were doing history at the time. I stood there for maybe a minute before the teacher finally went to ask what I wanted. EC, what do you need now? Me, I just as you'd expect I didn't even get to finish what I was saying and ended up throwing up. I never seen my teacher move and back up so fast in my life. I still ended up getting some on her legs. I felt so bad and ran to the back of the class where there was a sink. Every classroom had a sink where I threw up some more. She yelled at me to go to the bathroom and not throw up in there. Being a kid I followed her instructions. While on the way to the bathroom I ended up throwing up twice more in the hallway making even more of a mess leaving a trail behind me. Also might I add this was all just within 30 or so minutes after we had lunch as we ate just before getting back so my stomachache started off with a full tank. I don't feel too bad for the teacher because she didn't believe me and it could have been avoided if she had. I wonder how many kids can say they threw up on their teacher in front of the entire classroom. For some reason she never liked me even before this happened and singled me out a lot of times or did nothing when other kids picked on me or took their side so I at least got some unintentional revenge out of it but all that are other stories. I do however feel sorry for the school janitor for having to clean up my bath from not just 1 or 2 places but like 6 different ones all because I did what my teacher told me to do.